Okay, so, Zat Hashem, welcome, and I'm Sheva Chaya, and we're gonna learn a little bit today in the Schus of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. It's a great Lag BaOmer. Today we are actually into the next day, Lamed Daled of the Omer, but maybe this learning should be kind of a bechina of that idea. So we should bring Shabbos in early and take it out late, and stretch out the light of the special holy days. So also with the day of Lag BaOmer, we're going to do a Tosefet, Bechinat Shabbos of Rabbi Shimon. And the light of Rabbi Shimon is shining for sure every day. There's no doubt about that. And I know there's been a lot of beautiful teachings about Rabbi Shimon and the different teachings that are connected to Rabbi Shimon on this day. And I'm just going to share a few that I found, and we'll see how it comes together. Just a little background, as we know. So Lag BaOmer is a famous day of people lighting a bonfire. Most people know of the day as a people lighting a fire and sitting around a bonfire, dancing around a bonfire, and celebrating in the merit of this great tzaddik, of this great righteous person, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who brought a great light to the world. And his main work that he's known for is called the Zohar HaKodesh, and the Zohar HaKodesh literally means the book of illumination. It's a book that brought and brings a great light to the world. The world is a place of, and we're going to talk a little bit on the Kabbalistic spiritual side here. I'm not going to attempt to say that I'm anything like a Kabbalist, although I do live in Tzfat and share ideas that are connected to this realm of tapping into, delving a little bit into the Sod, into the secret, deepest teachings level of the Torah. But we are living in days when this element of waking up from the deepest places, from stories that even just reading the words, we might not even really understand. In fact, we probably don't even really understand what the depth of the teaching is. But just to read the words, the holy words of what the tzaddik said, and stories about the tzaddik is affecting us in ways that are huge and unbelievable, and we can awaken our spiritual side, the deeper elements of ourself, even just by hearing some of these things, hearing stories of the tzaddikim, learning a little bit of the words of the tzaddik. So we're going to do that. We're going to do that in the school of Rabbi Shimon. It should be a Kiddush Hashem. So just a little bit of background. In general, the Torah is on many levels, and one way of looking at it, we have the literal side of the Torah and the deeper side of the Torah. So if you've ever seen a Torah scroll, so you have the Torah scroll, and when the Torah scroll is held up, you see there that there's ink written on parchment, right? And the ink is black and the parchment is white or a lighter color. And so the literal teachings that we have are on the level of the black ink, which is literal. It's telling us what, when, where, who, what's allowed, when it's allowed, how, stories, specific details about our ancestors, about life, about the rules, the ins and outs of life. And that's called the black fire. And that's like the ink on the page. And then there's the canvas, the parchment, which is light, which is called the white fire. All the spaces around and in between all of the letters of ink that are written on the parchment. All of that white space in between and behind and around the letters is compared to the deeper teachings of the Torah, the Kabbalah, the Sod level of the Torah, meaning there's always a deeper story going on. There's always a lot more going on. And the story behind the literal letters of the teachings themselves is a very important level of things, even if we can't read it directly. And because it's these shapes around the letters, it's not something we can necessarily just look at and read and understand. But then we have in our tradition, especially leading up to our times now, more and more sages and teachers that are helping us understand what that space in between the letters is, what it's saying to us, what it's about, what the most important factors for us to focus on are. And there's no better example of this than Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. So Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai brought the light of the inner dimension of the Torah, and light in general is, if you think about light is something that it's not something that you can catch. It's this kind of elusive level, and that inner dimension of the Torah is what Rabbi Shimon is bringing us. So there's a couple sources I want to share with you. Here, first we're going to start with a little bit of background. And this was from a little article that I read from Rav Ariel ben Sadok, saying that the 33rd day, so the 33rd day, Lag BaOmer is the 33rd day of the Omer, and on this day, Rabbi Akiva transmitted to Rabbi Shimon the keys of the Kabbalah and of invoking Eliyahu Hanavi. So Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was on a level of learning Torah where he was really connecting Shemayim Va'aretz, connecting the great spiritual realms all the way down to the most physical realm of the earth where we are. The Omer is a time to rebuild after we got a huge influx of light for Pesach, right? So going back now 34 days ago, we had Leil HaSeder. And on Leil HaSeder, this night where we not only commemorate but re-experience leaving Egypt, of being taken out of Egypt. This is compared to the all the gates open, the full light shining on us, just free gifts, huge lights, big gifts, really much more than we contain, but we get filled by it. We celebrate in it for that day. Lag BaOmer, and then there's the next day, right? So what do you do the next day? The day after this great, huge light comes down. So not only the next day, but the next 49 days, we count. We count day after day, going through every configuration of the lower sefirot without really getting into these things too much. Meaning that we have so many different aspects of our life, how we can relate to the Creator, how we can work on ourselves and refine ourselves, understand ourselves in relation to it. Are we balanced? Am I too much of a giver? Do I constrict too much? Am I a balanced person in the center? And there's so many different combinations of this. 49 days, we see 49 different configurations of all of the midot, where we can understand something about ourselves in relation to understanding something from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, these aspects. So the 33rd day of the Omer is Hod Sheba Hod, right? And Hod Sheba Hod, as we know, this is Hod is a day of receiving, right? Hod is the opposite of Netzach, and Hod is a day, you can say Hod can be translated as glory. We say there's one of the most famous lines that comes up often, it's a really good one, is Hodu Lashem Ki Tov. We're acknowledging, and it's a place of receiving. It's on the left side of receiving. Netzach, the opposite of it, these are compared to the two thighs. So Netzach and Hod are the right and the left. Netzach on the right Netzach can be translated as being in charge, the conductor of a symphony is the menatzeach, and to lenatzeach something is to conquer it. It's an outward imposing justice type of a force on the right side, on the column of the right, and Hod, which is just coming out of this day just yesterday, Hod Sheba Hod, it's the feminine opposite of that. It's an inward force. It's the left column, and it gathers in, right? There's a line that Rav Ariel ben Sadok brings, saying it's the decorations, the beauty of the wife, the force that receives the benefit of proper order and alignment of balance in the universe brought about by Torah observance. So it's like it has an energy of gathering, right? And we know in relation to Lag BaOmer is famous for being the greatest gathering, right? This year things are different. Everything is different now, and everybody knows that, and something that we should really contemplate and do our best to be really present with this new reality that we're in. But still, the energy of a day is what it is, no matter what the outside factors are. And this day of Hod Sheba Hod is this great day where this huge light came to the world, where the teachings of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai became available to the world. And we're going to get into understanding a little bit more of this in a minute when we move into a teaching of Rabbi Nachman that kind of can give us a sense of really how awesome this is, that we received this light, that we have access to it. Okay, so normally on Lag BaOmer, I live here in Sfat, just a 15-minute drive away. I can see from my roof Meron, where Rabbi Shimon is buried, and usually hundreds of thousands of people come through Meron on this 124-hour period, which is a pretty unbelievable feat. Over the past few years, it's become more and more organized, that, it's not a simple thing, crowd control, to have hundreds of thousands of people coming through this tiny little village, really, in northern Israel. It's really a tiny, there's like one entrance and one street up, and, how do they make that happen? So over the years, I've seen it become much more organized, but it's an organization of an unbelievable amount of people gathering. And this is a very powerful thing, the gathering, and this is an underlying theme that I want to throw out there and really, share with this class as one of the most important teachings that comes with Rabbi Shimon, with the stories of Rabbi Shimon and the teachings of Rabbi Shimon, is being together, is being a chabura, is having your circle, having your friends, and having the people that you learn with. And really knowing how to be good to each other, how to be together, and knowing that underlying, no matter, there's a lot of different factors flying all the time, but no matter what is flying, no matter what the different factors are, there's an underlying principle that if it's not working, none of it counts and none of it's working, and that is that there has to be mutual love and respect in a circle. And this is on a small scale, which we see with Rabbi Shimon and his circle. And there's story after story that comes through of Rabbi Shimon and his chabura. Rabbi Shimon was known as the Rosh B'nai Aliyah. There was a circle of people after the students of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva had 24,000 students who died in the plague in these days, the first 32 days of the Omer. And this is why we practice morning practices during this time. And so they were chavrutas, they learned, they were tzaddikim, they were on a very high level, and yet there was an underlying issue in the level of respect, of giving to each other, of loving each other, and how they related to each other. This is said as the underlying reason why this plague happened, that there was a problem there. But thankfully for us and the whole world, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was one of the students of Rabbi Akiva, his smaller circle, right? Getting back to the circle, the Chabura, his smaller circle survived, and Rabbi Shimon was called the Rosh B'nai Aliyah. They're all B'nai Aliyah. What is a B'nai Aliyah? In Hebrew, B'nai Aliyah means those that are going upward, right? So, and people who are constantly learning, there's always another level. No matter how high a person gets, who can always go further. And this is something that, everyone on their level works with it. And Rabbi Shimon was known to be the Rosh B'nai Aliyah. He was the top example, the head of always going further, going up and up and up and up, which is not necessarily natural. It's a divine level. And Rabbi Shimon is the best example of this, really, that one of the best examples of this that we have in all of our tradition. And so his example is not only to go up all the time, but to bring everyone else up too. And this is another theme that I want to share. Rabbi Shimon not only brought these unbelievable, mind-blowing teachings and new openings, new understandings of the Torah, ways for the Torah to reach more and more people, but he gave it over. He gave it over for other people to also be growing and going further and further up. And you see time and time again in the stories of Rabbi Shimon that come up, where one of the students comes, it could be his son, Rabbi Eliezer, come and say, he was inspired and he has something to give over on the Torah, and then the response of one of the other people of this small group, of this chabura, of this inner circle. So as what, if I only lived to come to this moment today to hear these beautiful words of Torah that you said to me, my brother, it would have been enough. Right? Over and over again, we have this type of a theme where the group comes together and just respecting each other, listening to what they're saying and learning from the words of their friends, which are, big, huge tzaddikim. But this is a goal that we should all have from the example of Rabbi Shimon, that whoever we are, whatever level we're on, and whatever level our chabura, our circle, our people are on, to look and find the good, to hear the teachings of each other and respect it, and make a space for it, and celebrate it. Just be amazed by it, and that might be even more important than the teaching itself. Right? So this is an underlying theme that's coming up all the time with Rabbi Shimon, and not to say anything that the teachings themselves aren't important, because they are. They're amazingly important, but I'll be the first one to say, I read these teachings, I got this little version of the Zohar HaKodesh a few years ago, and the Zohar is written in Aramaic, and this has the Aramaic, and has right next to it the Hebrew written right next to it. So when I read the Hebrew, I don't know Aramaic, and sometimes I read it and I'm just, I can't say that I understand exactly what Rabbi Shimon was saying or what these teachings are saying. A lot of the time, that's how I feel. But it feels like reading those words, reading the stories, even just saying the words themselves, even without understanding them, is a connecting and healing thing. And sometimes we need to be simple, right? So Rabbi Shimon, for me, the experience this year of Lag BaOmer and learning these teachings and reading these stories, it's just really refreshing to be simple, to just take it in and do your best with it, whatever it might be. So this is very much in line with this Hod Sheba Hod, this gathering in of the gathering in, just being there to receive it and hear what it says, and the benefits will come through. Okay, and so Rabbi Shimon was this example of, Hod Sheba Hod is gathering in the teachings, and Rabbi Shimon, he would gather all the benefits of the Kabbalah, and he brought them together. So Lag BaOmer is a time to receive, and it's a day of ascent. It's a time where we could really rise up. And so even though this is the day after Lag BaOmer, the light of Lag BaOmer is still very close to us. I'm sitting here, very close to Rabbi Shimon. I can see Rabbi Shimon from my roof. And the 3 days before a tzaddik leaves the world and the 3 days after, there's still a very high level of being connected to that place. So we're still totally in it. We're holding on to it. We're really pulling that light into the days beyond him. So this is a day of rejoicing. And basically, the teachings of Rabbi Akiva were brought down and connected through Rabbi Shimon on this day. So I want to jump to a teaching of Rabbi Nachman. We are going to read a few stories of Rabbi Shimon and look at some teachings of Rabbi Shimon also. But I want just to get a little sense of this experience of receiving, which this day is all about. I want to go into Likutei Moharan. We have in the first section Samech Vav, the 66th lesson in the first section of Likutei Moharan. And I'm going to read a bit of it inside so we can get a little sense of this idea, and it's connected to Rabbi Shimon. Okay, so it says, Vihi na pishnayim bruchacha Elai. V'yomer v'chule, im tirei oti, lukach meiti, ihi lecha, chen v'chule. It says Melachim. So it says there's this idea of receiving double. When a tzaddik leaves the world, whoever is around him, his students that are near him, receive double the level of his teachings, which is pretty mind-blowing. But that's what this lesson is based on. והנה נתקיים אחר כך באלישע פי שניים. נמצא שהיה אלישע מתפלל בכוונה יותר מאליהו רבו, כי כל הניסים והגדולות שעשה אלישע, כולם היו על ידי תפילה, כמו שאמרו אבותינו זיכרונם לברכה, הפסוק, ספר נא לי את כל הגדולות אשר עשה אלישע, ואלישע כי עבד תפילה הוא דוד. So it says that Elisha was the student of Eliyahu, and he was with Eliyahu, and Eliyahu left the world. And it says that Elisha, that the miracles that he brought down were better. They were bigger than his teacher. And it says that his everything was through tefillah, which is prayer, as it says in the Megillah in the pasuk. Tell all of the wondrous things that Elisha did. And it says here, Elisha ki aved. He served. He was a servant, and we know avodah is another word for tefillah. Everything happened through prayer. Okay, so now Rabbi Nachman is going into explaining. Da shefshar sheyeh talmid gadol meharav. Ahinu sheyeh lo pi shnayim karabo, v'af al pi chen hakol yeh b'kocho shel rabo. So we should know that it's possible that a student can be greater than his teacher. As we just read, this concept that his learning, his understanding can be double of his teacher. And even though that's the case, all of it came through from the teachings, the strength of his teacher. V'hina p'ni shnayim bruchacha Elai bruchacha daika, she'al yedei b'chinat haruach atzmo shel Eliyahu rabo yelo pi shnayim kamoto. So it says that it's very specific, the pasuk, that it doesn't just say that he'll receive double. He says baruchacha in the spirit, specifically in the spirit, that he received double from the spirit of his teacher. Ki ita sheyesh la tzadik bechinat shnei ruchot, ruach le'ela, ruach letata, kamo shekatuv, ele todot Noach le'ela. So it says that a tzaddik, a righteous person, has this element of having two ruchot, a spirit, two spirits, right? Two levels of spirit. A lower spirit and a higher spirit. A lower understanding and a higher understanding. A lower connection and a higher connection. As it says in Bereshit, these are the generations of Noach. It says the word Noach 2 times. Noach referring to the higher level of Noach and the lower level of Noach. Okay, there's a little small note here, which I'm going to skip for now. That this tzaddik, this righteous person, has a life above and a life below, a life connection above and below. And the higher level, every person is connected here on the earth. We're walking with our feet on the ground in the earth. And then we have our divine connection, the higher connection in Shemaim. Connecting, the highest level would be to connect the heavens and the earth. And this is what a tzaddik is able to do. And it says here that a tzaddik, a righteous person on the higher level, is very huge. They have a huge connection above. V'talmidim hemim atzadik mishor shechad, rak shehem tuluyim bo כענפים באילן, שהאילן יונק חיותו משורשו, והענפים יונקים החיות דרך האילן. So I love these teachings, not only in Rabbi Nachman's teachings, this comes up a lot with Rabbi Shimon also, and Rabbi Shimon is going to be mentioned here in a minute, But this beautiful imagery comes up. How says Rabbi Nachman, how can we understand a tzaddik? What is a tzaddik? What is this great righteous person like? So he says that the student and the teacher really have the same root. It's just that it's like the branches on a tree. So when you think about a tree, right? So how does a tree function? So you have the different aspects of the tree. You have the main bulk of the tree is the trunk of the tree, and then you have branches coming off of the trunk of the tree, and then there are leaves coming off of the branches, and flowers and fruits if it's a fruit tree, and deep below are the roots. So he's saying we can learn something about a tzaddik from looking at a tree. A tree gets all of its life force from its roots. It pulls up, right, the nourishment, the water from the roots. And the branches, you think of the higher part of the tree, those branches are basically nursing off, they're pulling life force through the tree. ויש בזה כמה בחינות, כי יש תלמידים שהם בבחינת ענפים, ויש שהם בבחינת עלים, וכן שערי הבחינות. So we can look into this a little bit deeper and think about the students of a tzaddik, of a teacher. So the students are like the branch. So there's different aspects of students, right? If the tzaddik is connected to the roots of the tree and the trunk of the tree, the main essence of the bulk of the tree. So there are students that are very close to the trunk. There's students like that. There's students that are branches that are further out from the trunk. There are students that are more like leaves on the tree, maybe flowers, maybe fruit, right? Different aspects. So there's all these different levels, and how close a student is to the teacher will affect which aspect they are of the tree. ובשעת הסתלקות הצדיק, אז הוא משיג הרבה יותר ממה שהשיג בחייו. כל אחד לפי מדרגתו, כמו שמצינו ברבי שמעון בן יוחאי, באידרו ורבי הקודש ובשאר צדיקים. And then he says, in the time when a tzaddik leaves the world, so he in that moment when it's time to leave the world, he accomplishes and is connected to much, much more than he did in his life. It's like a very auspicious moment. It's a huge moment. And each one according to its level. And he says here, this is an example we have. This is one of the core examples that we have of this, is Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, Zchuto Yagin Aleinu, and doing this learning in his merit for Lag BaOmer. And truthfully for all of the different tzaddikim. V'da shezeh al yedei שבשעת הסתלקות, אזי ירד בה למטה בחינת הרוח והחיות דלעילה. So what happens when a tzaddik leaves the world is that higher connection, that Shemayim connection, comes down. ואזי נתחבקין ונתאדחין יחד הרוח דלתתא עם הרוח דלעילה. So then the lower spirit and the upper spirit are unified in that moment, and that's why there's so much more comes down in that moment when the tzaddik leaves the world. So a tzaddik in the time that they're in the world, they're connecting Shemayim va'aretz, but they're mostly down here. They're in the world, and when it's time for them to go back to Olam Haba, to heaven, to the higher realm, to the source of the neshama, the source of the soul, then that higher level where they're connected to up on above, it's like it's opened up. It's like the gates are opened up, and all of the great light of that tzaddik is open for that moment when that connection is made, the higher spirit connecting to the lower spirit. כי באמת שניהם אחד, בתכף שנתגלים זה לזה, נתאחדים מאוד באחדות גדול. Because really the two spirits, really it's all one. Right? When we're in the world, there's these moments where things seem separate. That's what the world is like. We're constantly seeing, I'm separate from you. I see all this separateness in the world. The world is showing us separateness all the time. But the underlying truth, as we mentioned in the beginning, we have to remember there's always more going on. There's more to the story. The underlying truth is that it's really all one. That whatever the highest levels of me, of you, of any person in the world, it's totally in us. The entire, it's a part of us. We're totally connected to it. It's really all one thing. And there's this very, very special, auspicious moment with a tzaddik, with a righteous person, that that the higher level it's revealed that it's all one, right? It always was all one, but it's opened up. It's to our eyes. It's made available to us that it's really all one. ומחמת שהרוח דלעילה אינו יכול להיות בזה העולם, כי טבעו אינו יכול לסבול כלל זה העולם, על כן נסתלך לעילה, ועל ידי זה נסתלך הצדיק, כי כשנסתלך למעלה הרוח הנ"ל, נסתלך עמו הרוח דלתתא מחמת שהתאחדו מאוד באחדות גדול כנ"ל. So really, even though it's all one, when a person is in this world, that higher spirit, the higher level of their spirit, it can't really fully come down into this world because it really can't stand this world. It's on a level of total connection, of the highest connection, and the world is a world of perut, of seeing separation all of the time. And that's its nature, is that it's really, the world is really a very hard place for it to be. And it goes up when the tzaddik leaves the world, everything goes back up. Everything goes up to the highest place. And the spirit goes, right? When a person leaves the world, they take their last breath. The tzaddik takes his last breath, and the spirit literally goes back up. And when that higher spirit goes back up, the lower one goes with it. Because really, they're totally connected. So really, it's a really huge, big thing to be by a tzaddik when the tzaddik leaves the world. Afilu mi she'eno talmido, ki mechamat she'az yired v'nitkale lemata ruach d'la'ela, nimtza she'nitkale az ha'ara gedola me'od. ועל כן הוא טובה גדולה לכל שנמצא אז שם, והוא טובה להם לאריכת ימים, וכמו שאמרו רבותינו זיכרונם לברכה, על פסוק ויחי עוד לנצח. So it says that in this moment, a very, very big light comes down, a very big opening comes down, inspiration comes down from the tzaddik, and it's a very amazing effect on whoever is around. So if the student is around, for sure, any student that is around, it's a great effect on the student. And even if it's not a student of the tzaddik, whoever's around the tzaddik in that moment when the tzaddik leaves the world, it has an amazing effect on that person, because that person is basically subject to, affected by, in the presence of the unification of the highest and most earthly levels of that tzaddik in that moment. And he said, so this is it helps bring long life, and it brings a pasuk that you'll live forever. Ki yirat chachamim yamutu. So there's this great level of awe and yira with the tzaddik leaving the world, which anyone who's near it receives it when they're around it. אבל לתלמידים מגיע הערה גדולה מאוד אז ביותר, כי מחמת שהם תלויים בצדיק ויונקים משורש אחד, נמצא שזה חיות דלעילה הוא חיותם ממש. Any student that is closer to the tzaddik is going to receive even more from the tzaddik, because like we said before, this example of the tree, so a branch on the tree that's very close to the trunk of the tree is going to be affected by this great light coming down even more. They have this experience of the higher and lower spirits coming together in that moment. So through this, being exposed to this, the student can receive double of what the tzaddik, the level of what the tzaddik came to in this world. And I wanted to bring this up, so I think I'm going to leave it there for now. Let's see if there's one little more thing to say here. That really, this moment, this day of Lag BaOmer, which we just experienced, and we're still holding on to the light of that day of Lag BaOmer, this is the day where that transmission happened. right? The great light of, so Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, when he was in the world, we're going to read a couple of stories now, and to be honest, they're pretty far out. These stories are really amazing and far out stories. And so even when he was in the world, his effect was astonishing, amazing, mind-blowing. And so how much more so with this teaching of Rabbi Nachman we can take with us is this great light that came down on this day of Lag BaOmer. And the energy of any day it's always going to be that. So even though this is not the day itself that Rabbi Shimon left the world, that light of Rabbi Shimon's connecting the higher and the lower spirit of his understanding of the light he was able to bring to the world is the greatest on this day. It's open for us. This is a great day of opportunity to connect also to our higher selves through this. So I want to read a couple of stories of Rabbi Shimon, which come from, they're translated here from the Zohar, and just to get a little sense again of who he is and who he was. So this is from Daf 11a. Rav Pinchas was a frequent visitor to the house of Rav Rehumai, who lived on the shore of the lake of Gennesareth. So Rav Pinchas, this is referring to Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, who is Rabbi Shimon's father-in-law. He was a man of note, well advanced in years, and had lost his sight. Okay, so this is speaking of Rav Rehumai. Said he one day to Rabbi Pinchas, "Verily I have heard that our colleague Yochai possesses a precious jewel," which is his son-in-law, Rabbi Shimon. "I did look at that jewel, and it flashed like the radiance of the sun when he emerges from his sheath, and flooded the world with a light which radiated from heaven to earth, and spread to the whole world until the ancient days was duly enthroned. That light is wholly contained in thy household, and from that light there emanates a tiny and tenuous ray which is shed abroad and illumines the whole world. Happy is your portion. Go forth, my son, go forth and try to find that gem which illumines the world, for the hour is propitious." Rav Pinchas took his leave and embarked on a boat in the company of 2 other men. He noticed 2 birds which were flying to and fro over the sea, and cried to them, "Birds, birds, ye that fly about over the sea, have you seen anywhere the resting place of the son of Yochai?" He paused a while and said then, "Birds, birds, go your way and bring me an answer." They flew away and disappeared into the distance. But before Rav Pinchas left the boat, they returned, and one of them was holding in his mouth a written note stating that the son of Yochai had left the cave together with his son Eliezer. Rav Pinchas then went to visit him and found him sadly changed, with his body full of sores. He wept and said, "Woe unto me that I see you thus." He replied, "Happy is my portion that you see me thus, for otherwise I would not be what I am." Rabbi Shimon then opened himself up as a vessel to experience the spiritual. After this, he trailblazed to open up a new pipeline of Torah, which he poured forth through his lessons. So this little story comes through just giving us a little taste of Rabbi Shimon, his father-in-law. This comes up a lot. There's stories saying, let's go and see the face of our Rebbe, right? Let's go and see the shining face of our Rav. And how to find him, keeping your eyes out for a light shining in the world and heading towards that light. And the description here of Rabbi Shimon, it's not for no reason that it comes down this way. That's the description, that Rabbi Shimon was compared to the light, like the light of the sun, and Rabbi Shimon himself said that through his teachings of the Zohar Kodesh, from these deeper teachings of the Sod of the Torah, that the Torah would not be forgotten in Israel ever. And there was a time when it was a close call. More than one close calls where we were so distant and so far, and yet because of the Zohar Kodesh, we're still here learning. And everyone, the flood of Torah available online now, day after day, night after night. It's an unbelievable thing. All of this, it's all in the schut of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai said that there will come a day when the Torah, these deeper teachings of the Torah, will be so important to us, like on the level of how we need water. We need water to exist, right? So these teachings, getting a little taste of these teachings, this is keeping us going. And the description here of Rabbi Shimon saying that he shines a light onto the world and describing it as a ray of light. So this is sparking the idea of what Rabbi Shimon said of how the Geula will come. And we're in times now where there's so much, opening up. There's so much potential for learning now, for coming to understand ourselves better, our place in the world better. And it's really important to understand this mashal, this analogy, this way that Rabbi Shimon describes how the Geula will come. He says the way the Geula will come is like in the morning right now. So now for me it's 4:45 in the morning. Within the next hour, right now it's totally dark outside. The darkest hours before the dawn, and then the light starts to open up. First the night is black, the sky is black, and then it becomes a little bit lighter darkness, right? It's like a very, very dark blue. And then as the sun starts to rise up a little bit more, it's still behind, it's not fully shining at all, but as it starts to shine a little bit more, that blue gets to be a brighter blue, a lighter blue. And then usually, at least here in Sfat, the way that I see it, there's a kind of pink light that is in the higher part of the sky, and it's still not a bright day yet at all. And then a few minutes later, that pink light starts to come down closer to the tops of the mountains and in the view in the distance. And there's still, the mountains themselves are dark. The light hasn't hit the mountains yet. But then a few minutes later, that pink light is on the mountaintops, right? And then the sun actually comes up over the horizon on the other side, and some yellow light starts to come in. It's still pretty light. It's still pretty subtle, that light. And then, another maybe 15 minutes go by, 20 minutes, half an hour goes by, and you see rays of light, and it getting lighter and lighter until the sun actually comes up and fills the day. And, we get to more and more, and those first moments, it really is stretched out. It's stretched out. And Rabbi Shimon said this is the way that the Geula is going to come, that it's not going to be all at once, that we're sitting here in the dark and suddenly this huge light turns on and we're done, right? That everything is filled with light. It's going to be one ray of light and then another ray of light, just like the sun comes up in the morning. And then another ray of light, a little bit more color, a little bit more ability. What happens when the light comes out? Then I can see. Then I can see the land. I can see more details. I can see the colors and the shadows and the light, the trees and the hill on the other side. As more and more light comes, there's more and more what I can see, and what we can see is a relation to what we can understand. So little taste of Rabbi Shimon. Okay, we're going to go to another story. This is one of my favorite stories. I love the stories, there's so many of them, but I love the stories of Rabbi Shimon that are connected to Rabbi Chia. So Rabbi Chia, one of the great students of Rabbi Shimon, he became part of this inner circle, of this chabura of Rabbi Shimon. So at first he was not in the circle, and Rabbi Chia was famous to be one of the. He was the teacher of the children, and he was a very thorough teacher. He wouldn't just teach the children and tell them the Torah. He would go out and he would catch a deer and he would prepare the hide and make it into a cloth, and he would write the Parsha of Bereshit by hand with the child, and each child would go through this experience of learning the Torah on this very tactile, step-by-step level with a lot of integration, which shows how awesome Rabbi Chia was. And even though that's the case, at first, Rabbi Chia was not in the circle. He wasn't in yet. But he knew about it, he heard about the circle, and he really wanted to get into the circle. So I'm pretty sure this is the story where Rabbi Chia gets introduced into the circle, which is one of my favorite stories. So this is on Daf 14a. Chia the Great once visited the masters of the esoteric lore to learn from them. He came to the house of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and found it shut off by a curtain. Rabbi Chia felt bashful and said, "I shall stand here and listen to what he says." So first he comes up and he stands outside. He can't even go in. There's a separation. And he said, "I'll just listen from outside." And he heard Rabbi Shimon say, "Flee away, my beloved, like the gazelle, or like the young hart on the mountains of spices." This is a pasuk from Shir HaShirim. This signifies the longing of Israel for the Holy One, blessed be He. She implores him not to depart from her to a distance, but to be even as a gazelle and a young hart. These animals, unlike all others, do when running go but a little way, and then look back, turning their faces toward the place where they came, then running on, then again turning round to look back. So the Israelites say to the Holy One, blessed be He, "If our sins have caused you to flee from us, may it be your pleasure to run like a gazelle or a young hart, and look back on us." And indeed, is it not written, "And yet for all that, when they will be in the land of their enemies, I will not cast them away, neither will I abhor them to destroy them utterly." Furthermore, a gazelle sleeps. Okay, so let's just go back on that a little bit. So Reb Chia comes and he's sitting outside. He's still not inside the circle. And he hears Rabbi Shimon bring this pasuk from Shir HaShirim saying, run like the gazelle and the hart into the distance. So this is referring to this dynamic. And again, the underlying theme with all of Torah is that it's all about a relationship, right? We have a relationship between us and the divine, the creator, and we have relationships between each other. And this relationship being alive and active, this is the key, right? This is the underlying key. You know, the more alive we are, the more alive our relationships. So for both our relationship between us and the creator, and our relationship between us and other people. And so sometimes, you know, throughout our history, the whole story of Shir HaShirim, if you start learning the story of Shir HaShirim, it's the story of us being close and then far, and closer and then far. And this is very much like this example of the deer or the gazelle in nature, which when it runs away, there's it's like the mating ritual really of the deer, that the one other, and it runs away, and it's running like it's running, but it doesn't just run and run forever. It runs and then it stops and looks back, and then they run the other way, and the one chases the other one, and then they look back, and it's back and forth. So this is an analogy for our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with God. When we mess up a lot. We're human beings. We're made with all kinds of fixings that need to happen, and yet the relationship goes on. How could that be? And what Rabbi Shimon brings here is this idea that as much as HaKadosh Baruch Hu, this relationship, sometimes Hashem might want to run away from us because we haven't been tuned in, we haven't been aligned, we haven't been doing the mitzvah, we haven't been loving each other or revealing Hashem in the world like we should be, so he runs away. So instead, if you're going to run away like the deer runs away, which means not fully running away and then looking back. And back and forth, this dynamic of running and returning, running and then connecting again. So this is what Rabbi Chia hears from outside. Rabbi Shimon goes on, "Furthermore, a gazelle sleeps with one eye closed and the other eye open. And so Israel says to the Holy One, blessed be He, be unto me like the gazelle, also in this. Yes, truly, He who keepeth Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps." So yet another example of how no matter how much we fall, even the lowest of the low moments of the lowest of the low, it's never to the end. There's always reconnecting. And Rabbi Shimon brings this other pasuk from Vayikra. Sorry, it's not a pasuk from Vayikra, from Tehillim, saying that Hinei lo yanu v'lo yishan shomer Yisrael, that the guardian of Israel never slumbers or sleeps, no matter how far we might have gone or go. Rabbi Shimon is saying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to the Creator, to God, be like a gazelle. If you sleep, if you have to close your eyes to us, be like a gazelle who only sleeps with one eye closed. There's always one eye still ready to look and see us, no matter how far we've fallen. Hearing this, Reb Chia said, "Behold, supernal beings are present in this house, and do I stay outside? Woe is me." So Rabbi Chia is like feeling it, like I'm not inside, I'm not in the inner circle, and he wants so much to be a part of the inner circle. And he commenced to weep. But Rabbi Shimon, hearing him from within, said, "Verily the Shekhinah is outside. Who will go and bring her in?" Said Rabbi Eliezer his son, Though I burn, I shall not burn any more than the phoenix, for the Shekhinah is there outside. Let her enter here, in order that the fire may be perfect. So Rabbi Shimon teaching inside, Rabbi Chia didn't knock on the door. He didn't, make his presence known, but Rabbi Shimon knew he was there. He felt there was this presence outside of their circle, outside of the house. And he said he's there learning these highest Torahs, and he says, but I can't learn the whole Torah without the Shekhinah's outside. There's a Jew, a holy Jew, yearning outside of the circle to be a part of our learning. And he says, who will bring it in? Who will bring this holy soul in? And so then his son, Rabbi Eliezer, says he understood this, that he should bring in Rabbi Chia, right? There's a phoenix burning outside, and to make the Shekhinah complete, bring her inside so it'll be perfect. Then he heard a voice, not yet have the pillars been set up, nor have the gates been fixed, and he is of those who are too young for the spices of Eden which are here. And then a voice came, there's a bat kol this from Shemayim saying, really, Rabbi Chia is not ready for this, right? He's not prepared to come to this level of learning inside the circle of Rabbi Shimon. So Rav Eliezer did not go out. Rav Chia, still sitting without, sighed and recited, turn, my beloved, and be like unto a gazelle, or like a young hart upon mountains of disruption. So he brings another pasuk, bringing up the gazelle from Shir Hashirim, Rav Chia, in response to not almost being able to come in and then not being able to come in, right? Of being like a gazelle. Then the dividing curtain opened, but Rav Chia did not enter. Rabbi Shimon lifted up his eyes and said, he who is without has, by a clear sign, been permitted to enter, and do we remain here? He stood up, and lo, as he rose, a fire began to move from the place where he stood and the place where Rabbi Chia was. So Rabbi Shimon doesn't give up on this person who wants to be a part of the circle and come inside, this holy, holy Rabbi Chia. And even though he wasn't ready, right, there's a clear message that, he's not even really ready to be in this circle, but Rabbi Shimon couldn't stand not bringing him in. And he himself got up and moved towards Rabbi Chia, and this light and fire moved with Rabbi Shimon, which is often a part of the stories with Rabbi Shimon, that there's pillars of light and light surrounding the circle of people learning. And he says, okay, he stood in the place. The fire itself went from where he was to where Rabbi Chia was. Said Rabbi Shimon, a spark of radiant light is without, and I am here within. Rabbi Shimon said, there's a spark of light outside, and I'm here. It's not complete, right? Until we're all together, it's not complete. Rabbi Chia could not open his mouth. When he entered, he dropped his eyes and looked not up. So Rabbi Chia became mute. He couldn't say a word. Said Rabbi Shimon to Rabbi Eliezer, his son, arise and pass thy hand over his mouth, for he is unaccustomed to these surroundings. He says to Rabbi Eliezer, help him out, right? Put your hand over his mouth, because he's not on the level yet. Rabbi Eliezer rose and did so. Then Rabbi Chia opened his mouth and said, my eyes now see something they have not seen before. I have reached a height that I did not dream of. It is good to die in the fire kindled by the good gold, the place where sparks fly on every side, each one ascending to 375 rows of angels, and each one which spreads itself to thousands and myriads until they reach the Ancient of Days, who sits upon the throne. The throne trembles, and the trembling thereof penetrates through 160 worlds until it reaches a place which is called the delight of the righteous, and it is heard throughout all the firmaments. Then they all they that are above and all that they are below are greatly amazed, and cry as with one voice, this is Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the world shaker. Who can stand before him? When he opens his lips to expound the Torah, all the thrones, all the firmaments, all the angelic hosts, all who praise their Lord do listen to his voice. No mouth is opened, all are silent, and not a sound is heard until his words break through all the firmaments above and below. But when he ends, then the song and the rejoicing of them who praise their Lord is such that was never heard before. It echoes through all the firmaments of heaven, and all this on account of Rabbi Shimon and his wisdom. They bow before their master. The perfume of spices from Eden ascends in sweetness to the throne of the Ancient Days, and all this on account of Rabbi Shimon and his wisdom. So Rabbi Chia came in. First he couldn't say a word. He became mute, and then Rabbi Eliezer put his hand over his mouth, like Rabbi Shimon told him to do, to basically bring him into the circle, make him a part of the bigger circle. And suddenly he had a lot to say, right? He had this beautiful, beautiful words to say, basically praising Rabbi Shimon, saying Rabbi Shimon, he could say, at first he was so overwhelmed with this light of Rabbi Shimon, which is truly overwhelming. It's so beyond, he couldn't say anything. And then suddenly, when he could speak again, what did he say? He brought this most beautiful description of how awesome it is, every word of Torah that Rabbi Shimon is saying. Not only do his students around him, then there's the light and the fire, and it's tremendous and it's amazing, but every level of heaven is listening. It's silent everywhere. All the angels are listening. Everyone's listening. It's this moment. Rabbi Shimon is speaking. And not only that, but when he finishes speaking, everyone doesn't just go back to action. They just rejoice in how awesome it was that Rabbi Shimon said his words of Torah. So this is a little example of the beauty of Rabbi Shimon. How much there's so much to be said here. I literally don't even know what to say. It's just so beyond. It's so beautiful, though, that we have these underlying themes that are they're really, we can apply them to our lives, even though it's these far out stories, and maybe it seems like fantastical and hard to relate to. Really, we can apply to our lives. Rabbi Shimon cared so much to connect this great light that he had to share with the world, and that was his goal. And he succeeded, and he's still succeeding, right? Us learning here on Zoom today, God willing, this is giving Rabbi Shimon great nachas, right? Even reading a little story here and there of Rabbi Shimon is connecting again heaven and earth. Those beautiful teachings, just getting the tiniest little pinpoint inkling of an idea of how awesome Rabbi Shimon was. It's a big awakening for us, right? I don't know about you, but when I read a story like that, I get like the tiniest little glimmer of how awesome it is, the Torah, how awesome it is that we have this guidebook to be connected, not only to be people in the world and to become organized and live our lives and do our best in this world. No, life is so much more than that. And Rabbi Shimon was completely so much more than that aspect of life, right? So I see we're coming to the time in here. I had a lot more that I want to share, but I'm going to just share a little bit more. I hope you guys have patience for that. And the truth is, I prepared this class because I thought it was going to be yesterday on Lag BaOmer for some reason. It just seemed logical that the class on Lag BaOmer would be on Lag BaOmer, but it turns out that we set it up for today. So a lot of what I was going to share were segulot for the day. A segula means like you do something special on that day. There's a great opportunity to connect in a relatively simple way. And there's a wonderful teacher here in Eretz Yisrael named Yemima Mizrahi. And her teachings come through. I think you can also get it a lot in English these days, but mostly it's in Hebrew. And I just wanted to share some of her insights. So one of the things that she said is that, normally, like we said, we go and we do big bonfires and we get together. A huge part of the celebration of Lag BaOmer is being together. And this year, we're all still in our homes, right? We're not able to get together. Maybe a few hundred people went to Meron, not hundreds of thousands of people. I don't know about you, but I stayed in my house all of Lag BaOmer. I went for a little walk around the neighborhood, but I didn't get very far from there. So how do we see that fire? How do we connect to that fire? And normally the truth is this is bringing it so much deeper. It's bringing it into our lives on a level, into realizing that really that fire that we see on the outside, the bonfire that we normally look and we see it on the outside, we have to understand that it's really inside of us, right? That our hearts have that fire in them, and this quiet, more contemplative time that we have with going inside the past couple of months, the whole world doing so, which adds so much more. Even if you're doing it yourself, it's one thing to be contemplative and go inside. But if the whole world is suddenly inside more, so that energy is something very prominent in the world, it's something that we can go deeper into and understand. So she said, really, 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 the teachings of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the teachings of the Sod, the secret. So what is the secret? The secret is really finding that light inside of ourselves, inside of our hearts, each of us. And to reconnect to it, usually, Rav Wolbe says that blessings come to the world in hiddenness, right? That when there's a big bracha and the big blessing coming to the world, it comes hidden. It says, Kavod Elokim Haster Davar. And Geula is also coming from a hidden place, the level of Sod. And so we, in a way, this year, there's this like secret, private level of connecting that's really, really unique and special. And it's really promising, actually, because we really need to understand that each of us has this light inside of us. And, it's very private when we stay home. We're really inside. And because of that hiddenness, it's an incredible, opportune moment to go into the deepest place of Geula, of revelation, because it's hidden, specifically because we're not going out and being together and seeing each other outside so much. So, let me see. Okay, so yeah, there are all of these segulas that Rabbanit Yemima said to do on Lag BaOmer, which we already passed Lag BaOmer, but there's some good ones. And the thing that we already mentioned it a good amount, that really Rabbi Shimon was always bringing this level of looking underneath the revealed level and looking into what's really going on. So the question is, on this day, how Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, came. This one of the most famous stories of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is this coming out of the cave, right? He was in the cave. They lived in the time of great persecution, and Torah scholars were not allowed to learn, freely and openly. Like we are today. Nothing like that. It was an incredibly challenging time, to say the least. And so Rabbi Shimon and his son Rabbi Elazar were 13 years in a cave nearby here where I live, and they buried themselves in sand and learned Torah all day. And there was a fig tree and a mayan, a natural spring there, and they lived very simply for 13 years, learning Torah and understanding all of these deeper levels of the Torah. And then they came out. Then it was time to come out of the cave, and it's not for no reason that in these times, it's happening all over the world, everything in its time. But here in Israel, people are starting to really come out. Right, it's time. People are getting out more. The kids are starting to go back to school after all this time being in, and it's only 2 months, and we were in our house. We weren't in a cave like Rabbi Shimon, but it is like that. And so the question is, how will we come out? Right? How will we go out? How will we approach the world and relate to other people in the world? It's much more challenging face to face with people, right? Being on a screen. So I think in the past couple of months, people have gotten a little bit comfortable relating in this new way. There's a certain safety in not really needing to be in the same room or the same environment as other people, and being in our own environment, and there's like a separateness there. And but it's time. It seems like, God willing, at least here in Israel for now, it's time to start going out and connecting with people again directly. So the question is, how are we going to do that? When we look at another person, will we look at their exteriors, or will we look deeper to who they really are? And will we just like we've had more time, quote unquote, since a lot of us have, no work and school and, kind of not anything official to do for all this time that we've been inside. So how will we use our time when we go out again, right? How will we go back into the, we call it in Hebrew, it's time for the shigra, like get back into my, I have my routine, I do all the things that I do, as opposed to chofesh, as opposed to this like free time. But it's obviously not for no reason that we went through this experience of having this time. And a lot of people not only might not have jobs to go back to, but even if they do have jobs to go back to, or to figure out new jobs or new ways to manipulate their life so that they can work, there's a new level of contemplation in, how do I spend my time? What is worthwhile? How much should I be running around, and how much time should I spend connecting with the people in my home, with my family? How much time should I spend just contemplating my own life? Spending, think about, like, proportionally in a day. 3 months ago, 6 months ago, how much time did I spend a day sitting and thinking, right? And how much time have I done it now in the past 2 months? It's a lot more. There's just more, even if I was a kind of contemplative person before, it's a lot more now because there is space for it. And it can't be for no reason. And that contemplation, for a lot of people, it's inspired really wanting to get together and connect again more, which is really good. Our hearts, Rav Eliyahu, Rav Shmuel Eliyahu here says, how much we want to hug each other and see each other and go and see each other and connect with each other. How much that love that's in our heart for each other has awakened and become so much more obvious to us. Who we want to see when we can go out, what we would do, and who we would see, and who we're close to, and who we really want to learn to be closer to. It's awakening in us in these times. So the question is what we're going to do with it. And I think, I'd give us all a bracha, and please bless me back, that this re-entering the world, the going out from the cave, so that we do it with grace, and we do it with a level of a new level of contemplation that we've gotten in these times, that we take it with us, right? That we really use it to our benefit. When Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Elazar first came out of the cave, they saw the people in the world working and plowing the fields, and everything they saw, they burned it up. They couldn't believe that people weren't connected on this level of Shamayim, of heaven, like they were learning on this level of Sod, that people were doing basic jobs in the world. And then Kadosh Baruch Hu, the Creator, said to them that you're creating a worse destruction than what was going on before. Go back to the cave. They had to go back for another year and recontemplate. And then when Rabbi Shimon came back out, Rabbi Elazar, as I read, he was still burning things up a lot, but Rabbi Shimon looked, and this example that we saw with Rabbi Chia, the example of really, recognizing the good in other people, making an effort to not be judgmental, and if we are going to judge other people, judge them for the good, right? If we have this like power in us to look at others and judge them and look at them on the outside, so to remember with all this extra time and building of contemplation of us to use it for the good, to look for the deeper level of that person and for ourselves, and to bring that deeper level of ourselves out, right? So we should be blessed with the light of Rabbi Shimon all year long, and these very special times that we're in, where we're yearning to be together and see each other beyond these screens, should really open our hearts to each other, that we connect to each other and respect each other in such a way that all of the circles come together, that we learn together, and that we can live together on such a level that it gives Hashem a lot of nachas, and the Geula will really come. These little rays of light, that one after the next, and it's starting to get light here now. That black sky is turning to that little bit of a lighter blue. So ray by ray, these little inspirations and awakenings that we're having in these times, we should really integrate them. We should really bring them into our lives. Just like Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, when he brought down these beautiful teachings, he brought it down to bring it down, to keep passing it on and on and on and on. Like a candle that's lit, you can keep lighting more and more candles, and it doesn't take away from that original candle. So we should recognize we have that koach, we have that strength, and it's our choice. We can do it. So l'chaim, thank you so much. If anyone has a question or wants to say anything, you can unmute yourself, I think, and you can ask if you would like. So, let's see. Okay, so blessing everyone. Have a great night. Good Yantif. Thanks for joining. All the best. Until next time. Take care.